What's good, everyone, and welcome back to another reaction video. Today we are going to be reacting to the deadly science of the Assassin's Creed Hidden Blade. Now, just by seeing this one little tidbit about the Hidden Blade is broken, I don't know if that means literally, as in it can be easily broken, or the metaphorical term of it being a really, really good weapon. Hard to say, in my personal opinion. I might be into this wrong, and it might be something else completely different, but it does bring the idea together, I guess, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's an interesting concept. Anyway, I don't know what else to say about this, except let's get on to the video. So I hope you enjoyed this reaction video. If you do, hit the like button below, hit the subscribe button to support the channel, support the content provided, and so on and so forth. Hit the notification button to be notified immediately when your video comes out. And yeah, um, if you have any videos to recommend, comment section below. As mentioned, links in the description. So be sure to give Game Theory some love and support for the video that they made. Now, with this all said, um, let's get right on into the video, shall we?
The Hidden Blade is broken, or at least it should be, because Assassin's Creed's most iconic weapon, the very symbol of what it means to be an assassin, may be nothing more than a glorified paperweight. Although, as we'll find out, that may be completely on purpose.
Oh, is this referencing the more current Assassin's Creed game? Been meaning to get it, but I don't really have the time to get it, and there's no stores near me that actually has it. I tried a few times, it's just not in store. Either someone keeps buying it out or something else. Yeah. Let's go with that. Anyway, back to this.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that would cut off its own ring finger in the name of science. Figuratively. Don't get too excited there, Santi. But speaking of cutting off fingers, today's video is sponsored by Assassin's Creed, who just released the latest entry in the finger-cutting franchise, Assassin's Creed Shadows. Taking place in feudal Japan, we get to explore the world through the eyes of the young ninja assassin called Nawe, as she embarks on a journey to fulfill an impossible promise that she made after her province was destroyed. But while the world around us may be constantly evolving with unpredictable weather, changing seasons, and reactive environments, one thing that never changes is the assassin's reliance on their most trusted weapon, the Hidden Blade. This thing just oozes cool. If I were making a list of video game weapons I'd want in real life, the Hidden Blade would be very close to the top. I mean, being able to call forth a blade at a moment's notice, eliminate my enemies, and then have it retract back to facilitate my escape, it would just be so freaking cool. Or would it? See, on this channel, we love covering the science behind Assassin's Creed's most iconic bits, like the Animus, the Leap of Faith, and Eagle Vision. But somehow, we've never really covered the specifics of the Hidden Blade. But just like an assassin spends years training, putting their blood, sweat, and tears into perfecting their craft, so too have I. I have gone through and picked apart the Hidden Blade piece by piece, running all the calculations and doing as much historical research into the weapon as I could. And you know what I found? The Hidden Blade may not only drop a few rankings in my list, but it may actually be a potential danger to the assassins using them. Besides the risk of accidentally releasing it and stabbing yourself, I mean. But the weirdest part is that it turns out the assassins may not only have known about this flaw, they planned for it. So once again, I ask you to put your faith in us.
I don't understand. What's the flaw with the Hidden Blade? I mean, the mechanics behind it, I'm gonna admit, it's kind of convoluted. Like, how it would be used um, in the modern era, that's not really something to question about, because in the modern era, you can actually figure out pretty easily how to do it. But it is kind of curious how you could do it back in the past. And I get it. It's a video game. I'm not supposed to really think that too deep into it or anything like that, but it is a questionable thing. After all, the hidden blade is a really unique item, weapon, and so on and so forth. To hear that um it has like this big flaw, it's kind of making me question what the flaw is. Because if it's in the past, I can get it. The mechanics on how to release the blade, it would be difficult to figure out. I'm not gonna lie. It has like even doing it modern era style, it's very questionable. Not gonna lie, but it does raise some questions on the weapon itself. Like, is it like the mechanic on how to release the blade? Is it something else that's uh we can't we're not really thinking about? Or is it something else that just like is really, really big? Yeah, I'm just getting really curious now.
Loyal theorists, as we leap into the science, or lack thereof, of Assassin's Creed. Hidden blades have evolved a
Hmm.
ton over the course of the series, changing in style, adding more attachments, but the core has remained mostly the same. It's a bracer attached at the wrist with a blade ejected via a spring mechanism. Like a certain
Okay.
superhero, but instead of webs, it's a metal blade. But when I sneak up behind someone and shink them from behind, how much force will those springs be springing on my enemy's unsuspecting back? Well, if we want to know force, then it's time we unleash our favourite secret weapon on this channel, good old FMA. Force equals mass times acceleration. We just need to find the mass of the blade and how fast the blade accelerates, and boom, we've got force. Let's start with mass.
Okay.
And like most calculations, the answer is never as straightforward as it seems, because first we need to know how big it is. And it's kind of hard to get a really good angle of the blade itself in the game. Thankfully, I was able to find this concept art for Ezio's hidden blade from Assassin's Creed 2. Now, I know all hidden blades are slightly different, but I think we could all agree that Ezio's are definitely the most iconic. Plus, beggars can't be choosers, and this image is at the perfect angle for us to whip out the pixel measurements. The average adult man's hand from wrist to the tip of their middle finger is around 190 millimeters. So,
That is a good point. Not gonna lie. Plus, I think Ezio's hidden blade is like the rough medium on it. I mean, some are thicker, some are a tiny bit shorter, but the general thing about the hidden blade is that it's from the wrist area to the end, it's always longer than the hand. So if we go by that, then it's generally around the same. Uh Ezio's about the rough medium to use. At least to me. Because I'm pretty sure Connor's is a bit shorter than Ezio's, and then Altair's is a bit longer than Ezio's, and then there's Edward, and I think his is around the same length as Ezio's as well, or maybe just a tiny bit longer or a tiny bit shorter. And I think Connor's is definitely a bit shorter than Ezio's. And I think Avor's Hidden Blade is about to the fingers, probably a bit longer than the fingers. I couldn't really get a good look at that bit, in all honesty. And then there's the original hand blade, and that actually took out a finger, and I'm pretty sure it was a bit more than where the middle finger goes, like in length, at least to me. And then there's the twins. I think theirs was about the same, but I can't be sure in all honesty. Like I said, it's a weird one for sure. I can't say in all honesty if it's the right one. Uh, and then there's the other assassins, and depending which one you're going with, it's going to be either the same length as the area it came from, or something else. It's hard for me to really say for sure, because again, the hidden blade for all the games isn't really uh following the same rules in all honesty. It's just either they're falling a similar height, the thickness of it's going to be a bit different, and so on and so forth. Like I said, it's not really a solid one, so I have to agree.
I was able to calculate that the hidden blade has a length of approximately 248 millimeters, or around 9.76 inches, and it has a width of 23.65 millimeters, or around 1 inch. The real trouble comes from trying to find out how thick the hidden blade is. Our concept art doesn't really show what the blade looks like from the side, and trying to get a clear angle from Assassin's Creed 2 and all of its 2009 goodness proved to be basically impossible. So instead, I took a different approach. The toys. There have been dozens of different hidden blade replicas made over the years as toys. My brother actually owned the Syndicate version of the blade, and that one had a thickness of 5 millimeters, or a fifth of an inch, about the thickness of a pencil eraser. From what I could find online, the Ezio version of the blade was around the same size, which would make sense as Assassin's Creed 2 takes place during the late 1400s, during the height of the Italian Renaissance, and bladed weapons from that period would have had a thickness range between 5 and 10 millimeters. So our blade is around 248 millimeters long, 23.65 millimeters wide, and around 5 millimeters thick, giving us a total volume of around 29.326 cubic centimeters. But that's just the first half of figuring out the mass. The second part comes from what it's made of. In the Assassin's Creed Essentials Guide, we learn that Altair, the protagonist from Assassin's Creed 1, stumbled upon the recipe for some, quote, special metal that belonged to the ancient godlike beings, the Isu. Now, of course, we can't really count god metal in these calculations, because firstly, it just kind of becomes a Deus Ex Machina that can do whatever it needs to do to make the game happen. But secondly, it just doesn't matter, because Altair was so worried about this special metal getting into the wrong hands that he took its secrets to his grave, and so every assassin after him wasn't able to use this special metal anyway, which means I had to keep looking to find out what those assassins used. This is when I came across the most unlikely of sources.
That's actually really interesting. Well, then again, you could actually look into Leonardo da Vinci. Because Leonardo da Vinci made Ezio's second hidden blade, and it didn't follow the same materials as the original hidden blade. It actually followed a different recipe on how to make the blade and whatnot. So, I guess in this case, we just need to figure out what metal Leonardo da Vinci could use around that era that looks like, well, pure steel.
The official Assassin's Creed Facebook game, Assassin's Creed Project Legacy. Yeah, remember when Facebook used to have games? It was a simpler time before everyone became a soulless, legless metaverse character. Anyway, in this game, we are told directly that the standard model of the hidden blades used by the Italian assassins in Assassin's Creed 2 were made of iron. Iron has a density of 7.874 grams per cubic centimeter, and we know that density equals mass divided by volume, or DMV. So we have our D and the V of the blade we just calculated, and so that gives the hidden blade a mass of 231 grams, or around half a pound each. Ezio's forearms are going to be jacked just lugging those bad boys around. Every day becomes arm day. But again, this is only half of the FMA formula that we've been trying to calculate. We have the mass, now we need acceleration. And thankfully, this one was a little easier to nail down. Using footage from the game and slowing it down frame by frame, I was able to find that the hidden blades go from retracted to fully extended in around 1/15th to 1/20th of a second, depending on the frame rate, averaging out at around 0.058 seconds. From here, we can just use the formula A equals 2D over T squared, where D is the distance the thing has traveled in meters, and T is the time it takes to travel in seconds. Plug in our 0.248 meters and our 0.058 seconds, and we can see that the hidden blade is accelerating at 147.5 meters per second squared. That is 15 Gs. Once it reaches the end, the tip of the blade will be traveling at around 8.56 meters per second, or around 20 miles per hour. That feels pretty insane, especially given this is ancient tech, but let's not get ahead of ourselves and head back to our FMA formula. So we take our 0.231 kilograms for the mass of the blade and our 147.5 meters per second squared for the acceleration. And with that, the force of the hidden blade projecting comes in at around 34 newtons, which is not a lot, actually. A study done for Forensic Science International found that it takes 49.5 newtons on average to stab through human skin, fat, and muscle, which is the bare minimum you're going to need to do to pull off a silent assassination. So, unless you're aiming specifically for a very thin part of the body like the neck, you might as well just punch the target hoping to knock them out. Now, there are occasions where assassins change their tactics. Rather than using the blade's spring power to pierce the skin, they activate the blade early and then essentially punch their target with the blade extended. This changes the outputting force massively, as you're no longer requiring the spring mechanism to do the work. Assassins are well trained in hand-to-hand combat, and the average punch force from someone like a martial artist is anywhere between 1,000 newtons to 2,500 newtons, clearing that 49.5 newtons with ease. That being said, it isn't the most subtle way of taking out your targets. A punch is far more obvious visually, which is why, in order to keep their cover, we do tend to see the assassins doing the more subtle spring blade-led strikes. Wait, did you see that? That wasn't just any old enemy Ezio assassinated. That was a brute, the toughest enemy there is, with incredibly tough plate armor, and he just stabbed through it like it was nothing. So far, our calculations only account for skin, muscles, and fat, and given YouTube's guidelines and just general decency, it's unlikely our targets are going to be naked. But plate armor is designed specifically to protect against blade damage. I can't even imagine what kind of power the hidden blade would need to be firing to pierce that, but we can run the numbers and find out. Up until now, we've been looking at newtons of force. However, it became very apparent very quickly that this approach wasn't going to work for me again. As it turns out, an armor's protective power isn't really measured by the force needed to break it, because, as I've said, the whole point was that it was so tough it would never break. Instead, historians tend to look at the kinetic energy required to pierce the armor. Kinetic energy is the energy something has due to its motion, and the reason this was used for measuring the strength of the armor was because the only real way to pierce it wasn't with a sword, but with an arrow. The number of joules, and therefore the speed the arrow needs to fly at in order to penetrate the armor, depends on two main factors: the armor's strength and its thickness. As I mentioned, Assassin's Creed 2 takes place around the late 1400s in Italy. Around that time, the most common style of armor would have likely...
This is really interesting, in all honesty. It's actually opening up a lot of gates. This is getting interesting. So, the way to accomplish this isn't as simple as seen. It's not as simple as said, and it's not, well, as telling either. There is a lot of stuff to really consider when it comes down to the basic formula, and it requires a lot of things. One is either the force you're putting in, the force you're outputting, kinetic energy involvement, and so on and so forth. This is a lot to take in, but it makes sense. And I guess there is technically ways to get bypass armor, though immediately it's not really that simple, is it? I mean, the best way to do it in a more basic understanding is to just find a gap and just take someone out that way, in all honesty. Because that's technically the only way you could do it. That's it. No other special thing or anything like that. That's basically it. No other thing. Just, I mean, that would be the best way to get, like, a hit in? But I highly doubt it's just going to be as simple as that, is it?
Been what is known as Milanese armor, named after Milan, where it was made. This armor could have been a variety of thicknesses, but typically it fell within the 1 to 2.5 millimeter range, or 0.039 to 0.098 inches. Given this armor was being worn by brutes, the toughest of the tough, I think it's safe to assume that the higher numbers are more likely here. As for the strength, this type of armor would have most likely been made of what is known as medium carbon steel. Steel is just iron that has been mixed with carbon to increase increase its strength. The more carbon, the stronger the steel. Medium carbon steel would have had a carbon content of around 0.3 to 0.6%. So for an arrow to pierce 2.5mm armor, research suggests you would need around 300 joules of kinetic energy. But with its medium carbon steel makeup, we actually need to multiply that number by 1.1, giving us 330 joules of kinetic energy required.
Okay.
From here, we can take the equation kinetic energy equals half mass times velocity squared, and do a little rearrange to get our hidden blade's velocity. With our mass being 0.231 kilograms and the kinetic energy being 330 joules, we get a velocity of 53 meters per second, or 119 miles per hour. That is an insane amount of speed. It is technically possible that the mechanisms existed. The Ottoman Empire from that time did have guns known as arquebuses that could fire bullets traveling at around 400 miles per hour. But remember, we aren't firing a bullet or an arrow. This thing is attached to our wrist. Firing this thing off to stab an enemy would likely dislocate your wrist, your elbow, even potentially your shoulder given that speed. And it would almost certainly put you off balance, send you flying into and then tumbling with the now dead Templar you just assassinated, which might ruin the whole sneaky assassin thing. Just call it a hunch. You'd be spotted faster than someone can yell, Stronzo! But all of this is without really considering the biggest factor, the actual material of the blade itself. Remember earlier when I said the blades were made out of iron? Well, iron is an interesting choice for a blade. And by interesting, I mean pretty bad. Iron weapons first appeared on the historical record around the 12th century BC and became super widespread starting in the 8th century BC. However, ordinary iron, sometimes called wrought iron, has a relatively low carbon count and as a result eventually got replaced by steel because it was more durable. By the Renaissance era, the idea of using ordinary iron for a serious military weapon would have just seemed silly because softer weapons are more prone to damage. If you were to take an iron blade to, say, the steel plate armor of the brutes, some of the energy you generate will go into damaging your own blade instead of piercing through the armor, which means that speed we calculated it needing to fire at to even have a chance of piercing the armor, even that likely wouldn't be enough as your hidden blade would break before the plate armor does. And good luck trying to get a bent hidden blade to retract afterwards. The games themselves even reflect this reality, with multiple entries showing the hidden blade's fragility in combat situations. Both Ezio and his father had their blades broken when deflecting a sword. The turncoat assassin in Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag had his hidden blade bent completely out of shape, and even in the modern day, a master assassin got their blade stuck in a pillar and snapped off after a single punch. So the question is, why did they continue using this inferior metal? Surely using the more common steel would have just been easier for everyone and required a lot less risky mechanisms to be strapped to your arm. All of that is true if you're playing these games like my brother does and says, screw the stealth, I just want to kill everything. But that isn't how the real assassins operated. Their philosophy lies in hiding in the shadows and not drawing attention to themselves. During both Assassin's Creed 1 and 2, we see that assassinations were only set to be carried out when considered absolutely necessary, and they specifically tried to avoid open conflict in order to reduce collateral damage and casualties. Plus, assassinating every low-level henchman that crosses your path and leaving a trail of bodies behind you doesn't really mesh with the whole don't draw attention to yourself thing. Instead, you keep quiet, sneak past, maybe knock people out so they just look like they're taking a nap on the job, and save your fragile hidden blade for your main target. If you're assassinating them when they least expect it, like in their home, they're less likely to be armored up, making that iron blade still pretty effective. But if they are armored up, or you aren't able to get a clean shot of a weak point like their neck, you can just jam it in regardless, and if the blade gets damaged, that's okay because you don't need it anymore. It's done its job. Then you can just dispose of the broken blade because iron was way cheaper than steel and so was easier to replace. Or more likely, you would take it back to camp. Why? Because another huge benefit of iron is its repairability. Yes, steel is more durable, but iron was easier to fix should it be damaged. With the assassins using iron for generations, it means their blacksmiths would likely be some of the best in the world when it comes to iron forging, which likely played a part in why they never changed over to steel, something we did see happen during the 15th century. Those who spent their entire lives training on iron specifically didn't have the skills or the desire to make the change to creating steel weapons. Plus, the benefit of using pure iron rather than an alloy is that as you work and repair the metal more.
Okay, that's actually a fair point. That makes a lot of sense. Well, a lot more sense compared to everything else. But in case in point, it does make sense in a way. If we do focus on that bit, the fact that it can be reusable and easy to repair, then yeah, it would make sense. I mean, to be fair, Altair probably had like, well, any assassins before Altair just like had this bigger advantage when it comes to the hidden blades, because they use uh, a metal from the age of the Isus and all that. So that technically means, well, that it just works. Okay, that just came out weird. I'm not gonna lie. I probably should have said that better, but main case in point. The whole thing involving the Isu's metal probably just made the blade a lot better for assassins before Ezio. Well, before around the time of Altair. More durable, more stronger, and so on and so forth. So that does make sense. For you have to trade a reliable blade that can do this defying of physics related stuff for a blade that you can repair as easily. Hmm.
Or it gets stronger through a process known as work hardening. So if you have a broken hidden blade, you can hold on to it and get it back even stronger than before. But the big reason why iron was actually the best choice for the assassins was that iron, much like them, was discreet. Since steel was such a common material used for making weapons for organizations like the military and the Templars, it would have been very easy to keep tabs on the supplies of steel, where it was going, and they'd have a pretty good idea what it was being used for. If the assassins tried to get their hands on a bunch of steel, it would have drawn too much attention to themselves. Whereas, because iron wasn't used for this purpose, large sums being gathered and blacksmithed would have been less of a concern for the Templars, making it a much more reliable material for the assassins to obtain while remaining unnoticed by their Templar enemies. So there you have it, theorists, the science and history of the Assassin's Creed Hidden Blade. Weapons forged from iron in order to keep the assassins below the radar, and while it may not have been the best in all situations, with the right technique, they could absolutely be the key to a successful assassination. So long as you're not trying to take down the most heavily armored dudes imaginable. Then you're either gonna end up with a broken blade, or your blade will fire out of your wrist so fast, it'll be you that ends up broken. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory! Thanks for watching. Now that you're armed with this knowledge, how do you feel about being an assassin? Do you not care, and will you go in all guns or blades blazing? Or will it make you more cautious, only using your hidden blade when absolutely essential? What? This is absolutely essential use. However today's theory made you feel, Assassin's Creed Shadows allows you to take either approach. You can
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense. They're being sponsored by Assassin's Creed. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Though I do know it's a really interesting game. I do know the basic stuff about it. That you can either be a brute force character or a stealthy assassin. I kind of actually like this kind of concept. It's something I kind of wish they did when they went with Assassin's Creed Syndicate, because that's usually what I did. I used one twin for the brute force kind of stuff, and the other twin for the sneaking around kind of stuff. And I based it off their personalities, basically. That's how I actually went about when it came to the two of them. It's interesting to hear about the fact that the one thing I usually did when it came to Assassin's Creed, just like come back in a now more modern current game. It like I'd never really expected that, and that's really cool. That's something that I so casually did out of just absent-minded thoughts turn into a reality. It's really ironic how things work. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like button below. Hit the subscribe button to support the channel, support the content provided, and so on and so forth. Hit the notification button to be notified immediately when the video comes out. And I'll be sure to see you all next time. Tell me what you think about this theory in the comments section below, because I understand why they use the material now and all this other stuff, and I find it actually really interesting. Though it does raise questions about the bird thing, but no matter what, it's still an interesting concept. So, yeah, I want to hear your opinion about it in the comment section below. But with this said, hope you all enjoy. Be sure to give Game Theory love and support for the video that I reacted to that they made. And yeah, with this all said, hope you all enjoy, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.